This was the expectation and this was the reality. Expectation, reality. I had scouted out a perfect camping spot on the Bergslagen Trail with a fireplace and a wind shelter overlooking a little lake, slightly elevated and facing right to the west. This spot is located about half a kilometer from the closest gravel road, which is a significant distance for hauling heavy gear all the way. So initially I was thinking of going there by myself, travel light and sleep in the shelter all by my own. But then I decided to bring my son Ogge and my granddaughter Elle. And I wanted her to have her first camping experience in the woods in full comfort, so I brought a huge glamping tent and a selected part of the full kit. I brought camping beds, sleeping mats and a very limited cooking gear. Since it was summer and there was a shelter, some log benches and a prepared fireplace, I left out the camping stoves, the tables and a lot of heavy cooking equipment like the iron tripod fire pit, the murika and the cast iron wok. They all weigh a ton and are really cumbersome to carry. And instead of carrying in the wooden boxes like we tried the last time we went camping, I discussed all about that in the previous video. I tried a new method this time, to pack as much of the cumbersome stuff as possible in a huge net I bought. It's a hay net for horses called a slow feeder, and we filled it with as much of the bulky equipment we could and carried it between us on a broomstick. It worked okay as a proof of concept, but it was still really heavy in the end, hard on the shoulder and hard to walk without stumbling on the rough trail. Especially if you also carry a 25 kilo backpack containing all the camera gear, tripods and lenses and all the water we needed for the whole trip. Although absolutely a method worth exploring further, with a longer and stronger pole for example, it was no walk in the park. Pun intended. Even if it was a light glamping, so obviously 2 adults couldn't bring all the equipment in one go, and every round trip to the car was about 1 kilometer on pretty rough trail. That's way too long for a 5-year-old to manage, so I decided to do all the walking and carrying back and forth to the car to get all the stuff to the campsite, giving Ogge and Elle some quality playtime by the lake in the meantime. The tent canvas alone is 21.6 kilos, and we had food, beer and wine, in glass bottles of course, and a lot of ice packs in the cooling boxes, so this was really heavy. As I said, for lightweight glamping, it's still a lot of stuff, and everything is either bulky or heavy, so it's hard work for a grandpa on a hot summer day to do all the carrying. But on the other hand, it enabled Ogge and Elle to have a bath and a good time. We were almost ready for our grilled spicy hot dog lunch with potato salad when we realized I had forgotten the cutlery. Again. Luckily, we found a single fork on the ground that someone had dropped or left behind. It would have been no fun to eat potato salad with the fingers. I think I'm starting to get the hang of raising the tent by now. It took me no more than about 15 minutes to raise it all by myself, despite some challenging circumstances. The only flat spot next to the shelter was just big enough to fit the tent between tree trunks, stones, ant hills and wood stubs. No margins at all actually. And I had to improvise by tying some of the strings to the shelter itself instead of using pegs, but it worked. I did the dishes immediately, directly in the lake. Quite soothing actually, standing with my tired feet in the water. And then, after all that hard work, it was finally time to relax for a while and have the first well-deserved ice-cold beer. As you can see, this seems to be a quite popular place for hikers on the trail to take rest, or families to come and take a bath or have a picnic. So we weren't alone very much during the day. Perhaps not the solitude we are usually looking for, but with a happy and lively 5-year-old joyfully yapping away constantly. Voices of some other people nearby is hardly disturbing the peace, since there is none. And it made absolutely no difference for us, for our experience this time. The water temperature was above 25 degrees Celsius, so it was hardly cooling at all. Almost as warm as the air, so we took our time relaxing on an inflatable sleeping mat before it was time for fika. We made coffee and had some biscuits in the shelter while the sky darkened a bit, and we had some drizzling summer rain and actually some thunder for a while. We offered some freshly brewed coffee to a nice Swiss-Swedish couple that cuddled up in the shelter to seek refuge from the rain while the thunder passed. A brief acquaintance with some small talk over a shared cup of coffee. Really nice. The clouds drifted away after no more than an hour or so. The sun came back and it was still a very pleasant temperature. In preparation for dinner, we mashed garlic with salt using a knife and mixed it with generous amounts of oil and butter to soak slices of sourdough bread to grill. Garlic bread goes perfectly along with steak. After salting the meat and letting it rest for at least an hour, we dried it off thoroughly before putting it on the grill. Absolutely dry. When it had a crusty surface, we took it off the grill to let it rest while preparing the garlic bread. Part 2 of preparing the meat was putting the steaks in a little pan to sear them a second time along with a lot of butter and garlic. Since the pan was so small, we had to do them one steak at a time until almost done before resting again, hopefully until perfection, while we grilled the bread. We sliced the steaks diagonally across the grain in thin slices in perfect finger food size. We had no cutlery, remember? It was my first time trying this cooking method, and all 3 steaks turned out really well. They were all good, but one of them was absolutely perfect. The best piece of meat I ever cooked, and one of the best steaks I've ever had actually. Absolutely awesome. And finally, we poured ourselves a glass of wine and ate with our hands. I have to buy new plastic wine glasses. They don't look so good anymore, especially not seen in backlight like this. It looks awful.
Alldeles utmärkt.
It was a warm and pleasant evening, and we enjoyed the wonderful view, the simple but excellent food, and some better wine. Even if the glasses looks terrible, it was a good wine, and the lake was almost like a mirror. Just as the sun was about to set, a family carrying backpacks came walking down the trail. Obviously hoping to find the shelter empty to stay the night, they were maybe a little disappointed to find us there, occupying the whole campsite initially, but we made the best of it and shared the space. And as it turned out, we got along really well and spent the evening socializing, exchanging snacks and experiences, the kids playing, all having a really good time together. Making new friends deep in the forest in the middle of nowhere, not what any of us had expected, but absolutely great. So it got rather late before we crawled into our sleeping bags and called it a night.
Alltså, det här är första gången jag tältar ute i skogen. Jag har inte tältat.
We hoped for a good night's sleep, but as it happened, a huge annual rave party, Stonehenge, Stonebridge or Stone Age, something like that, kicked off somewhere in the Kilsbergen mountain this particular evening. It wasn't close by any means, but the high pressure weather conditions carried the bass rhythms for miles and miles over the forest during the whole night. Chugga 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 chugga. Not really the soundscapes we were hoping for. So the next morning we made no hurry to get out of bed. Our newfound friends said their goodbyes and went on their way, and Ogge cooked a nice brunch with bacon, scrambled eggs and coffee. And in the meantime, I packed up the tent and prepared the equipment we didn't need for transport later on. We didn't have any rush, so I took a mule trip to the car and back now and then during the day until early afternoon, while Ogge watched Elle bathing and playing in the lake. All in all, it took me 3 times back and forth with rather heavy loads to get all but our final load to the car. So I needed the rest in between and found a little colony of yellow summer chanterelles just at the edge of our camp, which I picked, of course. And later in the afternoon, when we felt it was time to go, we put the remaining gear in the net again and headed for the car with a broomstick on our shoulders. If you have any questions or any suggestions or anything to add, or just want to say hello, feel free to write in the comment section. See you the next time.